Casey.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak in support of the Treasury Laws Amendment More Competition, Better Prices Bill. This bill significantly increases the fines and penalties that can be imposed upon Australian businesses for breaches of competition and consumer law, and most importantly, protects small business. My electorate of Casey is home to many small businesses across various industries. These small businesses are the engine room of the economy. It is these small and medium businesses that are often the ones driving innovation, economic growth, bringing new ideas to the marketplace and creating new jobs. Small business provides 4.7 million jobs in our nation. Small business owners have risked their financial security to chase their dream, but because of their size, they are vulnerable to the coerciveness of big business. I've worked in the small business environment for 15 years, and I saw firsthand, whether directly or indirectly, the pressure small business faces when working with bigger players. And these are negotiations and conversations that you don't forget. And when owners know that it's their house and their mortgage on the line, and they're negotiating with a business with significant cash reserves, it's an unfair balance. So we need to protect small business, and this legislation goes towards that. But small business isn't just about the economic benefits. Small business truly is the heart of the community, especially where I live in Casey. Small business is supporting community groups like CFAs, sporting clubs and charities. And even in our time of need, it is small business that is connected to the community, has the agility and the will to support their community. I see this every day in my electorate and living in my community, but I saw it last week when I was at Mount Evelyn IGA to celebrate the Inchpen family owning that business for 50 years in the community of Mount Evelyn. They really are pillars of the community. It was amazing to see the amount of members of the community that came, including Rick from the Mount Evelyn CFA. And at that celebration, Tony, the owner, presented him with a cheque of support that the IGA provides financially every month to the CFA. Normally Tony does that in private, doesn't make a big show of it, but it was a great occasion to celebrate. And when you hear Rick, who is a CFA captain, talk about the importance of that money to their organisation protecting our community, it's just another reminder of the importance of small business and protecting them. But Rick also talked about, in times of emergency, whether it's a fire or a flood, as we're experiencing at the moment, Tony and the team open the doors, provide any supplies that the CFA need, not a question asked, no bill run up, straight away the doors are open. And that's what small business does. They support our community, and we need to support them. We saw this also during COVID, where the IGA, they were talking about how they could support our communities, making sure those most vulnerable got the support they needed, whether it was food, whether it was toilet paper. They had the agility and the ability to adapt and provide our community with those vital resources that they needed. And that's why the previous coalition government recognised the importance of small business to the economy when we committed to JobKeeper, to the cash flow boost payments and 50% wage subsidies for apprentices. We supported around 1 million businesses and 4 million jobs. And I'm proud of the things the coalition did during their time in government to allow small business to flourish. And during the campaign as a new candidate, and since being successful as the member for Casey, I've had many businesses thank me for the previous government support to get them through COVID. And again, they talked about how it wasn't just their business, it was their family, and being able to put food on the table for their children. And this bill will help to further support and protect those small businesses by sending a clear message that unfair trading will be penalised. As I said in my first speech, we must acknowledge and recognise that big business will naturally support regulation and red tape, which stifles small business to the detriment of competition. And as a Liberal, I instinctively support free markets and the benefits they bring to the economy and the nation. However, we have to acknowledge the risks of dominant players in a market, a risk that I saw firsthand working in the food industry. For Australia to continue to prosper as a nation, we need to ensure our legislation supports the growth of small business in every way. These reforms will better protect small business and consumers by increasing penalties for anti-competitive behaviour. It will ensure that the price of misconduct is high and will bring our penalties in line with other countries. And as I said, this is so important because small business owners are risking their homes. Big businesses do not have that risk. The changes brought about from this bill are similar to the previous coalition government's proposal under the Treasury Laws Amendment Enhancing Tax Integrity and Supporting Business Investment Bill of 2022. We supported the amendment of existing unfair contract term provisions and the introduction of a civil penalty regime. There is also bipartisan support for the expansion of the class of contracts covered by the unfair contract provisions. The 2018 report by the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, found that Australia's maximum penalties for anti-competitive conduct were lower than the UK, the US and the European Union. At the moment, the maximum penalty for breaches of competition laws in Australia is $10 million, or 10% of annual turnover, whichever is greater. This bill would take those maximum penalties from $10 million to $50 million, adding a significant deterrent to big business. Businesses can also be fined 30% of their turnover during the offending period for engaging in anti-competitive behaviour, with maximum penalties for breaching civil penalty provisions jumping from $500,000 to $2.5 million. And the bill will amend 3 pieces of legislation: the Competition and Consumer Act, the Australian Consumer Law and the ASIC Act, to strengthen the existing protections from unfair contract terms in consumer and small business standard form contracts. It will introduce a new civil penalty regime for those small businesses that use and rely on unfair contract terms in standard form contracts. Now, the unfair contract terms are those that disadvantage one party but are not necessary to protect the interests of the other. Examples of unfair terms are excessive exit fees, automatic renewal terms, unreasonable termination terms, or price increases affecting only one party. Another example is reserving the right to vary the contract at any time and removing liability for interruptions in supply. And again, this is a challenge for small business because many big businesses have the legal support within their organisation to make sure they can review contracts with a fine-tooth comb. Small business does not have this ability to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers, so at another disadvantage, not just size, but the resources from a legal perspective. In small business, they often have this lower bargaining power that these clauses bring. It sees a lot of risk. And as I mentioned, I've seen this firsthand in my career. And you need to understand this threat and what it means to a business. And I've been in these conversations with an owner of a business dealing with multinationals and knowing that that business represents over 50% of your revenue, and one phone call overnight could close your business. And it's not just closing the business for you, it's not allowing you to put food on the table for your family. It's for those employees that took a risk to join your business, and that can be shut down overnight when a big business has a significant part of your revenue. And that's the reality that we have in Australia. We look at the food industry. 2 major players in Woolworths and Coles are a significant part of that industry as one example. So if you want to grow your business within the food industry, you need to work with Woolworths and you need to work with Coles. But they have and use significant power in those negotiations. So it's so important that we continue to protect small business so they can innovate. All the new food products, as an example, Deputy Speaker, that we get to enjoy, they come from the small businesses that are looking to create a unique niche in the market. If they don't have that ability, we lose, whether it's food, whether it's technology, whether it's any industry, we lose that innovation, we lose our advantage as a nation. So we need to continue to protect those small businesses. Protections against unfair contracts currently apply to small business contracts where at least one of the contracting businesses employs less than 20 people. But this bill will increase the scope of these protections by increasing it to businesses that employ less than 100 employees and turn over less than $10 million. And this is such an important change because in the current environment, at any time, 100 employees is not a large business. 100 employees is a small business. Their cash flow is still exposed. And we also want to encourage and incentivise businesses that have got 15 employees to grow to 50 employees and not feel that by moving over a threshold they lose some of the protections that they have. And I can tell you firsthand, I worked in an amazing company called Yarra Valley Snack Foods, and when I joined that company we were at 70 employees. When I left we were at over 130, but even at that time we were still a small business, we were still exposed, we did not have cash reserves. We were investing that back into the business so we could employ more locals, we could support farmers who were growing organic products that we sold. And that's what we need to allow, is protect those businesses so they can go from the small business to the larger business. And this change from 20 to 100 is significant. And I think it's something we need to continue to review to make sure we get that number right, because even 150 to 200, a lot of those businesses, as I said, don't have the market power. They don't have the cash flow, and that's the important part. It's the cash flow. It's the ability to go to the lawyers if you need it. It's also not allowing a supplier to be a significant part of your business. And we need to acknowledge in Australia the size of our markets, as I said, whether it's the banking industry, financial services, the food industry, there will always be large players within our market. That's just the nature of our country and our economy, and that's why it's our obligation in this House to continue to protect those small businesses that are risking it all to provide so much for our country. So as I said, consumer and businesses, they can apply to court to have certain unfair terms deemed void. However, this has not been enough to deter some businesses from including unfair contract terms in their standard form. And this is because those big businesses know that small business doesn't have the resources to go to court. They don't have the lawyers to review the contracts. And in many times they don't have the time to negotiate on those long-form contracts. And that's why it's so important that we give the courts new powers to determine an appropriate penalty, such as an injunction order. So if they do go to the court and they invest that time, they can continue to operate while that decision's been made. By strengthening penalties, Australia will be promoting competition and setting standards for corporate behaviour. Increased competition means prices are kept in check and there is more choice for Australian families. With the current cost of living soaring, the last thing small business owners need is the headache of navigating dodgy business contracts. It is vital that we support small business to thrive. They've survived 2 years of COVID and state-imposed restrictions on their trading. They are currently going through significant rising costs with energy, with labour shortages. It has never been tougher to be in small business. For Australia to continue to prosper, we must ensure our legislation supports the growth of all businesses. These new offences and higher penalties will make business think twice before including unfair terms in their contracts. Larger fines for anti-competitive behaviour will ensure a more level playing field for business. I will always support small business. It's in my blood, and that is why I am supporting this bill today.